Good evening. It is so great to have everyone here. For those who don't know me, my name's Peter Wiley, and I'm one of the clergy here at First Congregational Church. And after just shy of a 3-year delay, we are getting that visit from Brandon Chrostowski. And we are so blessed and so thankful to have you here. He was first supposed to be here on March 18th of 2020. 5 days earlier, everything closed down. We offer a very special welcome tonight to our Adult Education Board, who have been instrumental in making tonight happen, to Carrie Hill, who has really been that conduit between Edwins and Brandon and the church here, working out all the details, Sharon McDowell and her team for helping to make sure all the setup and everything else is in order. We give great thanks to John Stein and to Nancy Stillwagon for their generous financial contribution along with the church to make tonight possible. And one that we always forget, who is never noted. It's the people who are way back there, the ones who make it possible to have the sound right and the video right for those who are online sharing with us. Aiden Merritt, we are grateful for you being here tonight as well. And a very special thanks to one of our clergy, Steve Hoekstra, who really has been at the heart of bringing this together. Most of all, of course, a thank you to Brandon, but along with Brandon, he brought with him, I'm going to get the names right, I hope, Jordan, Roy, Melissa, Heather, and Barb, who you will see out in Fellowship Hall, and just wonderful people. It was fun to get to know them just that little bit before. And with that, we're going to share a video. So welcome and thank you, and please.
Restaurant empire in the Midwest that is about far more than food. It aims to tackle one of the nation's biggest problems, convicts getting out of prison and then going right back in. The story of Edwins begins with its founder, a man who was given a second chance and then dedicated his life to making sure others got one too. It is the latest story in our series, Who We Are.
Who's on burger tonight, guys? I got it.
At Edwins restaurant in Cleveland.
You can start rocking.
The only thing more important than turning out the finest food and wine is turning around the lives of its employees.
Did you already order? You already take a look and see what you...
Brandon Chrostowski is the man in charge.
Well, sit back, enjoy.
2 decades ago, he was a boy in trouble.
You were dealing drugs.
Mm-hmm.
How old?
18.
What happened?
Well, we got caught up in a little thing, and police came, and we all left.
You took off.
Took off.
Chrostowski found himself in front of a forgiving judge.
The charge that I carried was about 5 to 10 years in prison.
Why didn't he do that?
Well, I think there's 2 reasons: the color of my skin and the grace of God.
Given probation instead of hard time, Chrostowski caught on inside a kitchen in his hometown of Detroit, trained at the Culinary Institute of America, and was soon working at top French restaurants in Paris and New York. But the second chance he got was always in the back of his mind, so he came up with a plan.
The goal is to have the best French restaurant in
The world?
the best French restaurant in the world in Cleveland.
Yeah, Ohio.
Why here?
I just looked at where the worst high school graduation rate was, and Cleveland, Ohio happened to be the number 2 city in the country where people in high school didn't graduate. So I figured that's the place that it's needed.
You went to where you saw the situation being the worst and said, I'm going to make the best.
Yeah, makes sense. One turn like this, flip it, a whole turn like this.
Everyone who trains at Edwins, short for Education Wins, has had some sort of run-in with the law. Many spent years in prison.
It's the restaurant, it's the school, it's the institute.
Yeah.
Chrostowski wants to redirect their lives with a restaurant boot camp, a 6-month program that provides housing, a library, donated clothes, even a small farm.
This is a brute, so it's going to have very, very little sugar.
Students take classes on a wide range of topics, including the art of champagne tasting and opening.
Twist the cork one way, the bottle the other way. There you go.
You're a pro, baby. Should I have two after the one I'm playing?
The days are long, noon until midnight, and only 30% of students make it through.
When you talk to someone either in prison or just out of prison and you tell them that you want to train them to become a French chef, what's the usual reaction?
I think it's twofold. I think it's one, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Can't say that on TV.
Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about. And the other thing is, if you give me sand, I'll drink it. Just give me an opportunity, I'll take it. Because that opportunity hasn't been there in the past.
What's your goal long term?
Change the face of reentry.
Change the face of reentry.
Change the face of reentry. Change that perception of someone coming out of prison, or jail, or a bad, hard time, or addiction.
You're not a lost soul, you're redeemable.
Of course, yeah, of course. Not only redeemable, you can redeem and kick some ass too. So now we get into something a little bit more intimate, that's fish, right? I mean, to me, of all the things to cook, I have two passions of cooking. I mean, cooking in general, but risotto and fish.
Chrostowski also trains those still doing time inside 13 Ohio prisons, including here at Grafton Correctional Institution. These men will be out soon, and no one wants them to reoffend.
I mean, I'm right there in the bone, man. You guys did a great job.
Chrostowski says they need skills. The class we watched is full of hardcore convicts.
You're too forceful. If you got to push that hard, you're cutting through bone.
Sentences for murder, kidnapping, armed robbery, and more.
Let's find the sharpest blade, steal it, and we'll go to town.
Today, they're learning to fillet salmon.
You've got guys who have been convicted of some pretty horrendous crimes with large, very sharp knives. Does that concern you at all?
Not a bit. This is the most at peace I feel all week. It's really the safest place that you could ever be.
Inside a prison with inmates with sharp knives is the safest place you can be.
They're only 12 inches.
I'm serious.
And when I'm here, when I'm with someone who's focused and dedicating their life to culinary arts, to improving, to fulfilling potential, there's no greater space to be in than with another human being.
Daryl Lempek is nearing the end of a decade-long sentence for drug trafficking and weapons charges.
You know what they say, right? You get out what you put in. So I guess you put in the work, you reap the reward.
Are you ready to put in the work in the right way?
For sure. For sure. I've had enough. Definitely had enough. 9 years, it's enough. I can walk the straight and narrow. I can do the right thing.
And you think these classes help you get there?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Gives me a purpose.
Chrostowski's nonprofit program is funded by his main restaurants and private donations. He says he won't take any government money.
What do you want people to take from the idea of Edwins?
Well, there's hope. This thing is supported by like 7-year-olds who've given me like $4 their allowance, $4 in a Ziploc bag of coin. And the next day it's a $500,000 check. So from the very least of us to the very most of us, it works. And without that, it doesn't work. So the hero here is the community of people, staffing this, the community of people supporting it.
7-year-old.
Pretty sweet.
You can't say that on TV.
But it is sweet.
It is sweet, yes.
7 years old.
Yes,
she
it is.
believes that someone deserves a second chance, right?
Pretty sweet.
Because people do deserve a second chance. And when you watch anything, that idea behind recidivism, you've got to give people a purpose. You have to give them education if they didn't have it. You have to give them a skill so that there is a job to go to and the chance with a job.
It's a huge problem. So long term, about 10 years out, the DOJ says up to 83% of people who leave prison end up right back in. Edwins says their number with their graduates so far, 350, is 1.4%. So something is working there.
Yeah.
So there's the restaurant, there's the pizzeria. He has a butcher shop now and opening a bakery as well.
I'm just so floored by the fact that this decision on the part of the judge not only changed the trajectory of his life, but now he is changing the trajectories potentially of all these other lives. It is amazing what one person can do.
It is extraordinary.
I know where I'm going in Cleveland.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Welcome, Brandon, and welcome to all of you. So happy to have you here tonight. Edwins was actually formed in 2007. Edwins stands for Education Wins. That's the name behind Edwins. Edwins Restaurant in Shaker Square opened November 1st, 2013. I was there with Nancy when we were first dating. And Edwins 2 opened on November 20th in 2020 across the way where fire used to be in Shaker Square. There's about 100 people a year that are in the program. And one of the amazing statistics is that they have a 95% placement rate of all their graduates that get hired by restaurants really all over the world. And the other amazing statistic, it didn't start out this well. The recidivism rate is currently 1%. And how do they do that? At first, and there's a great TED Talk with Brandon that you can see, at first they would get out of prison at Grafton, where a lot of them came from initially, and they'd go right back to their communities, right back to their house, and go right back to whatever petty crimes were going on around them, and they would get into trouble. Brandon purchased about a 30,000 square foot facility right off of Shaker Square, apartment buildings, renovated them, put in a library, put in a classroom, dormitories, a butcher shop, a bakery, all still going strong, and that's really the secret, I would say. Maybe Brandon would say. And but I'm going to stop now. The only other thing I'd really recommend that you watch if you're interested in learning more is there's a short film called Knife Skills that was actually nominated. It's about 40 minutes long. It's about the opening night of Edwins. And it's filmed at the opening night and a little bit of pre-thing, but a lot. It was nominated for an Academy Award for short categories, and it's excellent, excellent film. And highly recommend that you watch that. So I'm going to start with Brandon, just telling you a little bit more about how Edwins came to be, and I've got a series of questions for him.
All right. Well, hey, thank you everyone for making it. It's a packed house, right? I mean, it's not bad, not bad at all. I mean, I know where to hang out in Hudson on Thursday night now. I'll be over here. But John, Nancy, thank you so much for making this possible, and it's a pleasure to be here. I see some people out there who are diners, and it's always welcome to support that you give. So yeah, I mean, the short of it, Edwins, he went through the dates of, November 1st of opening, then formed in 2007. But the actual inception of Edwins came in 2004, and I was working at Le Cirque in New York City. It's a French restaurant. It was in the Palace Hotel. If any of you have been there, if you have, you can definitely donate. Okay, it's a very nice hotel. But I remember getting a phone call from a chef who mentored me. You see, when I was younger, I wasn't exactly the best in terms of the society's eyes. In and out of county jail and. I had a chef who mentored me, and he taught me, it's not practice that makes perfect, but this concept that perfect practice makes perfect. And he gave me a set of skills in a French restaurant and French fundamentals, and it allowed me to see the world, literally. I mean, New York, Paris, Chicago, but that was all before I got that phone call in 2004 from the chef that mentored me. And he said, the young man, Quentin, that you had worked with, when I was in Detroit, that's where I'm from. Any Detroiters in here, or University of Michigan fans? A lot of those? No. One. There's one. Okay, two. Yeah. All right. So in any event, yeah, he calls me. He says, Quentin, I said, of course I remember Quentin. Quentin, was a young man. I always remember cutting my teeth in this kitchen when I was 18 and 19 years old, making creme anglaise or ice cream for the first time. Anyone here has made mayonnaise before? If you can remember your first time making it and how it all comes together to look like mayonnaise, you're like, it's a miracle. It's these were the lessons that we learned together, me and Quentin. Juliana carrot, things like this, just simple lessons. And he called to tell me he was murdered, and he was found stabbed, countless times in this abandoned building. And to me, he was the sweetest kid I ever knew. No more than 2 weeks later, the sous chef was killed. people were being put in prison, and I just couldn't help but reflect that I was here at Le Cirque on 55th Street in New York City with beautiful copper pots and Bonnet ovens, and something didn't feel right, and that there was something I needed to give back or do. I didn't know what exactly, but it occurred to me that if I opened a restaurant to teach others, like I was taught, maybe someone could have a different direction. And so that's really the beginning of Edwins, man. It goes back almost now, probably as long as we were scheduled to speech, a couple of years ago, and now here we are today. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm curious, besides the housing, how else did you reduce the recidivism?
Yes, this thing, recidivism, it's not a spice for those of you who aren't familiar. It's a statistic of rate of which you return back to prison, and they usually gauge that in like a 3-year metric, and nationally it's close to 50 or 60% if you live out in California. It's terribly high. Yeah, we keep it low. We keep it very low, and there's no secret to this recipe. It isn't. It's just, we're creating this fair and equal opportunity, right? It's fair and equal. We're receiving people from out of the criminal justice system. We don't ask what they did. We simply ask, have you been involved in the criminal justice system or affected by it? And they say yes. We say, okay, you're accepted, right? And it's a clean slate. I think is the first ingredient to this secret recipe, right? It's, we start with a clean slate. The next ingredient would be we ask more out of you. We ask you to be better than average, and then we give you the tools to do the job. And as mentioned, we have a campus, right? So we have housing. If you don't have safe housing or any housing, we have a library. We have so many other amenities that can help you. I call it rehumanize, right? That's the toughest thing, and perhaps the saddest thing that we do at Edwins is just rehumanize somebody. It's not about cooking. You might think so because you're diners, but it's not. That's the easy part. Teaching someone to make a bechamel or a hollandaise, right? That's simple. It's rehumanization of what's been stripped away from incarceration or poverty or just, always being looked at a certain way. And that's a true secret. We just challenge. We teach to the top. We care. We get out of the way when we need to. We step in when we have to. And it's that process over the course of 6 months, someone starts to say, hey, I can. And then from there, the world's their balloon oyster.
Great. The other thing I didn't really mention is just how you grew it, how it's funded. The most important thing is that all the 100 people a year that attend the classes, the program, it's 100% free, including the housing. So that takes funding. So how did you grow that funding over the years? And you've got a lot of interesting programs now, supporters.
Yeah, we got lots of support, Well, it's individuals like yourself, right? I mean, not just dining, but, donating and seeing something that's possible, but know that it needs support to get there. And so it comes from everyone in this room. It really does, no matter what your age. And, sometimes it's in the form of prayer. I'm telling you, that's working. It works. It really works. A lot of times in the form of money, right? It comes through contributions, and some it's the brain trust you share with us, right? Or the access to different people, or ways to make us more visible, right? That's how the thing spreads. You just can't stop. You just can't back down. You just every day have to keep going at it and going at it and going at it. But that's truly what it takes to make it work for the program side. The restaurant side, we run a smart business. We actually drive a profit from the business that goes to offset a $1.4 million deficit we have from free schooling and housing and everything else that we provide. So the restaurants do well. It's the philanthropic side that is the hard work to get out there and kick the can around. And government funds, it's personally not my bag. I think that it's going to take society to solve this problem. It's going to take civil society. It's not going to take government. The government can validate it and create policy and help us along the way for sure, but the government funds aren't what you think they are. They're asking you to create a metric and meet that metric, and then to do so, you have to unfortunately say no to people who maybe don't fit the mold of success in your eyes or my eyes or the government's eyes, right? It's just a different world, and to be transparent, we've accepted one state grant for $50,000, I don't know, 5-6 years ago from the state of Ohio. It was a faith-based initiative. It was the only money I felt good about taking from the government because the way they wanted to see it put to use, and we did so. Yeah, we did so. Yeah, so a lot of hustling.
Great. Another question I have is really this. A couple years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, the New York Times published an article of 52 places around the world that you have to go to. And Edwins was one of those places. And I was very impressed and proud. But the other thing is, it begs another question. Are there other Edwins concepts in other cities in the United States? How anybody approaching you to expand it? I know it's a lot of work, but I've never asked you that question, so I thought I would.
So yeah, and hey, look, I didn't know it was coming from these questions. So I'll tell you a story about I was in Wisconsin giving a speech, and I asked this group of junior high kids. There's about 300 of them. I said, "Do you have any questions?" Yeah, that was not the best question for me to ask. I feel a little safer on these chairs, but yeah, that's yeah, it's I got to say that a couple things. One, to go back to the prior question, when making this works, forums like this are essential to making it work. Okay, the idea to speak freely about something, to open minds, and to people who have open hearts, and then say, hey, this can happen. Like, this is a good thing. This is super important. So I just want to go back to thank you again. The question. I'm sorry. What was the question? I just feel so good being up here and
Edwins and other locations.
Yeah. You talked about hustling. So hustling is a big part of what we do, and so we have a consulting. I don't want to say branch of how we operate Edwins, but when people see news stories like the New York Times, they'll read it on CNN, or we just got published in Newsweek for an op-ed, and the first thing they say is like, I want to do this, and I guess we make it look easy, but this is a whole lot of work, right? So what we do is we come in and we'll consult around the country. We've working on a project in New Mexico right now. We had something going tentatively in Brooklyn, New York. I don't know if the organization pulled their organization together. We got a long-term shout out in Orange County, in California, right outside of LA. So we do help people connect mission with their goal or their business, right? Successfully, we've done it in Medina, called Serenity. Like, that was a consulting opportunity, right? That was for helping people with addiction and recovery. We've done it on the West Side with the West Side Catholic Center, who does amazing work feeding the homeless, but we opened up a pizzeria with them. We've helped, I think it's Finley Kitchen in Cincinnati, and inspire people in Jersey down to Dallas. I mean, there's a lot that we have. So the short of it is, yeah, we definitely do it. It's a revenue stream to help support this mission. It's also a social revenue stream because we want to see it spread. But around the country, there's nothing like Edwins. There isn't something with this high standard, all-encompassing support, and so therefore it's really become the national model for social enterprise and reentry. There's other people who've been doing it for a lot longer. Out in it's called Delancey Street out in San Francisco. They do a wonderful job. Not exactly like our program, but the mission is to serve those with a second chance. There's programs for the youth called Cafe Momentum. That was one of the places, I talked to the founder of that, and he said, when you did that, we knew it was possible. And now they're doing very well, very successful. DC Central Kitchen out in Washington, D.C., but nothing exactly like this. Yeah.
Okay. I have another question.
Sure.
The makeup of your students, like initially a lot of them came from Grafton. You had a pilot kitchen there, and they got initial training. I understand you're now drawing participants from other prisons, other states. Could you explain that? And then also curious how it's funded, because they've got to travel here and they've got to somehow study remotely and have equipment.
Yeah. So I'm gonna back out and I'll address the question of how many people are coming from elsewhere. But so just the scope of Edwins, we have it started in Grafton Prison, Grafton Correctional Camp. I started in 2012. Class of 25 men, great. We do get a lot of students from there. And that now has flourished to 12 or 13 prisons in Ohio. Then we opened up Edwins, the restaurant, right? Edwins restaurant is right here in Shaker Square, right? We're open Monday through Saturday. Please make a reservation, right? Then came up the campus. So 2015, I was like, we need to open this campus. The housing was subpar at the shelters, and we're asking for you to memorize the best wines of Bordeaux, so why can't we provide the best housing? So just start knocking on doors, put some deals together, and then we end up taking over 3 buildings, 2 of which were for housing. Then we expanded to another apartment for more student housing, then another house for family housing. And if that wasn't enough, we needed more, teaching. So teaching should be done in the environment that it's from, right? Like a butcher shop should have teach meats, right? A bakery should teach bread. So opened up a butcher shop and a bakery, right? So we can teach, we can supply our own goods and control the supply chain. There's a lot of things that go into that. Then there was Edwins 2 during the pandemic. During the pandemic, I actually doubled business. Okay, I know everyone's like, oh, we were like, let's go, right? I mean, we were pouring wine while people were waiting. I mean, we didn't know anything what to do. We just knew we were trying to be hospitable and survive, right? And we ended up doubling business. I needed more space, and then so that's where Edwins 2 came in. It's the old fire location, if you remember, in Shaker Square. Doug Katz had a great restaurant there. And then recently got another building for a child care center. So we purchased that, we've renovated it, now we're just waiting for approval from the city for the sprinkler system, and then we should have a free child care center open for any student in our program with children, okay? So that's like the next level. So students, where do they come from? I mean, at first it was going to every courtroom, shelter, church, anyone who would listen. Grafton Prison, we had a stream of people coming from. Now they're coming from all over Cleveland, the county, and even further in the United States. The premise of the prison program when we started it was to inject hope into prison. Now with technology and the pandemic to help this flourish was inmates are starting to receive tablets, like an iPad, these pads, whatever you call them, right? And there's all these telecommunication providers in the world, and we reach out to them and say, listen, can you put our content on your tablet? It's 30 hours, 20 hours of video. It's 5 hours and 6 hours of reading, then it's tests and quizzes. So all in all, it's about 30 hours of content to learn the cuisine of the French cuisine, how to, the worlds of wine and spirits. And so that's now reaching almost 400,000 inmates around the country. Okay, this is making a serious impact. So when he asks, they're coming from around the country, they are because of that. And how do we pay for it? The Cleveland Browns. So Dee and Jimmy Haslam, I mean, they're like second chance people. I mean, you see how they hire the players, you know what I mean? They believe in second chances. Like, all right, they're there, man. And Dee and Jimmy are the best. Like, they don't just do that for their team. They've been supporting us for probably 3 or 4 years. And we told them about this tablet program. They said, we'll pay for it to the videos to be shot. We'll pay for anyone in this country who completes the program in prison to get to Cleveland, Ohio. And this last class, we brought about 10 or 12 people in from Florida, Arizona, and California. Yeah, those 3 states. So now we're starting to fly people in, compliments of the Cleveland Browns, to Cleveland, where we have free housing, a program that we fund, and someone can turn their stars around, not just in 6 months, but in 6 months prior to being released. And that's truly life-changing, right? There's this idea of hope. I can say, yeah, you're going to be the next president, or you're going to be an astronaut. Where's your pathway to achievement? We have a pathway, a real pathway to achievement. So from what started in one little prison, now it's flourished to around the country, and it's pretty special.
Great. I'm going to circle back to COVID, because a lot of restaurants didn't make it during COVID. A lot of restaurants had to shut down or had to go in short staff, and it's just your restaurant survived. It wasn't open, but you had something which you didn't mention, which I participated in, which was it used to be 4 for $40. It was a dinner for 4 people for $40, and it was to go once a week. You could get a meal that could feed 4 people. Now it's up to 44, I believe, and inflation. But they were great meals, and they were all things that people could share, and it was I'd like to know a little bit more about how that came to be, because it was brilliant.
Well, thank you. I'll take credit for that one. All right. So the 4 for $40. Now you have to know, like, as working in Michelin 3-star restaurants in Paris, if on my gravestone, reads, "Here lies the man who said 4 for $40 with Salisbury steak," I'd be terribly disappointed, and I think Escoffier might be too. But to the businessman who survived and those who didn't, they would understand and respect exactly what happened. So COVID happens, right? And so, I mean, just a little bit inside the personal life is, I don't have a television, and I haven't had one since 2000, 2001 maybe. I don't stream things. My recent trip to Ukraine, I finally had to get rid of a flip phone to get a smartphone, right? I'm not in social media. There's a PR company who handles it for the restaurants, and then I put on LinkedIn, just so there's some way to access. But I'm disconnected, okay? I'm very much disconnected, but I'm ultra in touch with instincts and what the feeling is and what the feeling is not. And nothing can blur that, right? Because it's not being screamed into my face what's the truth, what's not the truth. Just go about life and look at what it is. So when COVID happened, I said, huh. And then they said, the governor's going to close the restaurants on Sunday. I said, well, we're going to have to open up tomorrow and do something, And what I sensed was that people were scared. They were scared. It started around the world and came here, and they didn't know what was going to happen. And I just know that food can be comforting. Like, food is very powerful. So if you know how to cook, like good, rich, good food, you know what I mean? You put out that meatloaf, or you put out some shrimp, or you put out whatever it might be. I said, you know what? People are going to buy this. And so I told the staff, we're not caving. We're going hard. We're going to go hard on this one. Meanwhile, I've got a butcher shop, a bakery, and a restaurant. And so for over the last decade, these things were being built. We were slowly, not intentionally, but we were slowly building this idea of how to make a cheap meal, because we were producing all the goods ourselves. And so the bread was cheap because we were making it. The meat was cheap because we were cutting it. I mean, think about this, right? So, and then it was just like, well, why not just offer 4 meals for $40? Families might be uncomfortable about the economic situation. Give them great food, and let's make this super accessible, right? I also started grilling out front. We had a grill out front, and we'd grill steaks, and people would smell it, and they'd say, oh, it was over with, right? So that's how it all happened. It was just using instincts and this idea that in a restaurant you have to survive, and there's no way we were going to quit. And the thing about the world is, the world thought this is a great idea, and I said, thank you. But I said, what about the other 14 years or 12 years of doing this project, and that we had to survive as hard, if not harder situations? This is just the life of a restaurant. And yeah, that's how it came to be. And that's how we survived COVID.
Good, great. Yeah. They were wonderful meals, and they're still doing it every week, and they send out an email.
And here's the other thing, man. All these seafood and meat places started having fire sales. So like filet mignon, $4 a pound. I'm like, all right, you know what we're serving. So we did lobster tails and filet mignon, 4 meals for $40. Yeah, dude, they were selling everything. Mussels were 20 cents a pound. I mean, everything was just because purveyors had to get rid of this product. Nobody was buying it. The world stopped. And we just kept taking it, cooking it, and we had an outlet for it. So a lot of things happened, but it all benefited the mission.
Now, I first met Brandon when he was, I think, Somalia or a special events manager at L'Albatros. And one of my first or third days with Nancy, we went to the Normandy dinner there, and that's where I met you. But it's interesting that you then, not that long afterwards, left to form Edwins, and I'm really curious about how other restaurants view Edwins, and do they view as competition or as support that you can potentially give them staff? Yeah,
so hey, look, you have to remember this Normandy dinner. There was a chef who came in from Normandy. There's a town called Rouen. It's actually Cleveland's sister city. So there's a relationship with the Maison de Francais, not Maison de Francais, it's like the Chamber of Commerce here in France. And they brought in this Mayor de Ouvrier de France, which is someone who is the best in the country at its particular skill. It could be woodworking, it could be this. The gentleman that got brought in, his specialty was appetizers in French cuisine. And what he made was, I don't know if you remember this, it was foie gras. He made it with this Calvados cream sauce, and it was multiple reductions with chicken bones. It was Calvados, and then he put Pommeau de Normandy, and then he put chicken stock, and then he put cream, and that sauce came down to this precious, little quart or whatever, and he put that on the foie gras. And I'm not kidding you, to this day, I'll never forget that dish. I don't remember what else happened that night, but that dish, everything blanks out from. But
there was a blanquette de veau.
Yeah, there was blanquette de veau. Yeah, there was. Ah, what a great night. So, in any event, the competition, whether it adds to it or what, I think at first there might have been some what the heck, but I think there was enough respect in the industry for a hardworking person. I work hard. We have a hardworking team, and people respect that. And if anyone wants to see the books, I remember one chef, and I won't mention names, his restaurant was struggling. He's like, I'd like to turn this into this thing that you're doing with the nonprofit. I put my hand on his head. I said, just, take your costs and multiply them by 4 to 6. And your business will only offset the first part of that. And the other 3 or 4 parts, you have to offset on fun. He's like, okay, let's, that's all I got. I mean, there was no question after that he was not going to do it. The degree of difficulty in doing this is impossible. And I think at first people didn't realize that, but now I think they understand the difficulty in doing this, and they're very appreciative. We have almost 600 graduates that are staffing restaurants across this city. And if you don't think that they're contributing or leading or helping them succeed, you're wrong. And they're thankful for that now. So at first, maybe not. Now, for sure.
Yeah, it's great. Circle back on that a little bit, and that one of the things I think I've observed about you over the years is he's got very loyal essential staff, because it's not all students who come in from prison. It's also people to teach them, people to run the bar, people to run the front of the house, people to train them. Mm-hmm. And your turnover rate has been very, very low of those people. I still see some. If you go watch Knife Skills, virtually all the people in that movie are still there.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
I'm gonna have to ask the team, but I mean, think about this. There's a core 4 we have, and they've been there since November 1st. And through life and everything that it throws at you, you know how this goes, right? Everyone knows how it goes. I think that everyone realizes that no matter how much time you spend in this industry, if you only leave this world with a paycheck and some great recipes, somewhat of a name for yourself, it's not enough, to leave behind a legacy of teaching, and that teaching being passed on, and so on and so forth. I chose the team carefully. They're thinkers. They see the field, and they understand it's bigger than food. And those are the people that we started with, and those are the people we still have. Now, around them, since we've grown, I can tell you that the positions that become open go to graduates. So now, I'm very proud to say we're 85% graduate managed. That means our chef, our sous chef, the other sous chef, the pastry chef, the general manager, the assistant general manager at Edwins are all graduates. It's like, before it was, we had to shoulder everything. Now they're shouldering it, and we're guiding. Same thing goes for Edwins too, or the other entities. This is truly an organization that walks the walk. We don't just say, we produce good students and we put them out. No, we hire them if they're that good, and we'll grow them if they're that great. And now some of them are making 40, 50, 60, 70 plus thousand a year. That's unheard of in the world of returning home from prison in this industry. It's like a fantasy, and they're killing it. Like, they're doing a great job.
Great. Yeah. You mentioned Serenite. That's a restaurant in Medina. A different concept from Edwins, but it's how did that come to be?
Yeah. So there's 2 judges, Judge Collier and Judge Kimbler. You might know them. You might not know them. And they reached out and they said, we're sick of our drug court being a revolving door, and the services in Medina County were not exactly job related like Edwins project is, like really hands-on skilled training. So they reached out and they said, would you do it? And I said, why not? You know what I mean? So, made the trip down to Medina, and And that's history, and it's still in business. It's the chef there is a graduate of our program we put in place, and he's still the chef there, and he's doing wonderful, wonderful things. So that's a whole other amazing story. I think if you haven't been there, definitely try it. Definitely check it out.
Yeah. Serenity is just down the street from Root Candle, right off the square in Medina, and it's at the site of the old Medina Steakhouse, and it's a different concept of food, but it's excellent and highly recommend it. I've another question, and that is further expansion in Cleveland. Now you've expanded. Can you tell us a little more about Edwins 2 and what that is about?
Yeah. Edwins 2, like I said, it became this, first of all, was this idea of we needed more space. So it was like, well, here's an opportunity right across the street. I live literally right behind CVS, so it's a block from the restaurant. Everything is centralized. The moment you start to decentralize, you lose quality, you lose touch, it just happens. So it was the right space, it was the right, geography, and we just opened up. We started rolling, man. It was that simple. But then it came to the point where the pandemic starts to, subside, and things start to open up with proximity to tables, and so the lease came up and said, hey, do you want to do it again? And I looked at the numbers and I said, well, yeah, let's do it again. And, so we were open for brunch on Saturday and Sundays. That's a great brunch. We do live music on Saturday nights. Now that's become quite the hit. It took about a year to catch on, but now we do, live music, great food. And then we're only open Thursday night after that. And then the rest of the time it's private events, private parties. So between that work balance and activity balance, the place generates what it needs to sustain itself and contribute to the Edwins Foundation, which helps contribute to the overall cause. So it's pretty sweet, man. It's more like West Coast cuisine, fresh fish, some steaks. It's not so French focused, but definitely good food.
And Edwins 2 is also a food incubator?
Yeah. I was getting, so if at first this was heavily the business and model and the revenue stream was people could come from anywhere in Cleveland who have an idea and they could use our kitchen as a ghost kitchen, and we would help them get their idea to market, and then we'd have the liquor license, we'd take care of service, and we do a little less of that, or I say a lot less of that, but it's still an option for the community at large. If they want to come in and do a dinner, they can throw it there.
Another little plug. It's the best place to be for New Year's Eve. We've been there New Year's Eve the past 2 years with terrific music, terrific food, and great staff.
Thank you.
Again, very little turnover other than the participants.
Yeah, participants rotate, and there's a lot of graduates who go there too.
Well, I'd like to thank Brandon. He's been terrific. Thank you for coming. We're not going to take questions from the floor. We're going to go into the fellowship hall. Yeah.
And before we do that, it's not often that I'm speechless. but I am in that, as I listen to you, I find you to be one of those rare modern day embodiment or reflections of the gospel. That I think about it as I listen, and here you are, somebody who had a challenge in your past, and you received grace, you received some form of love, and your response to that has been to give back so much. But then I thought about, as I wrote down some notes, 3 H's that for me are gospel-based. The first is that you offer hands-on help. Mm-hmm. You teach them how to make hollandaise. Yeah. And then you say, that's the easy part. No, it's not. That's hard. But you do say, and it's true, the harder part is recognizing everybody's humanity, especially if it's a humanity that's been lost along the way, and rehumanizing. But the final part that you sort of said, that you have so much hustle. Yeah. And it's that not giving up, keep at it. What an incredible example. What an inspiration. What a reflection of what it means really to live that out in your life. What I have been also asked to do is to share just a couple of things about some of the pieces that you received. One is this Ashes to Go. If you want to receive ashes, out on the street or an Ash Wednesday service. Those go without saying. But the other piece is this Lenten study series. Whether you're a part of this church or not, you're welcome to join one of these small groups It's an opportunity to reflect, to look within, to understand self, that we might be our best reflection out in the world, if even just the smallest a bit like Brandon. What a gift. Thank you for being here. And there will be those hors d'oeuvres and desserts, but did you want to say any more about that? Yeah, please.
Brandon, you want to talk about the desserts and hors d'oeuvres?
I have no idea what's being served. But the graduates and the team here can tell you exactly what it's going to be, or maybe you could too. I mean, yeah. But yeah, I was going to follow up on two things. He mentioned Lent, okay? He mentioned Lent, which was is big for us. You know, I'm a Polak, you know, so Czestochowa, the family's from, we do an original handmade recipe. We make pączki. You know the pączki? We fry them in real lard. They're all made by hand. I've got rose cream, lavender cream, like the original Polish flavors, you know, just so you know if you want to go to the bakery and get them. But then it reminded me of another thing. I was just in Ukraine, okay? And when going through Ukraine, I always go through Poland, and of course I eat the real pączki, and it's always beautiful. But I just want to tell you a little bit about Ukraine because it's been covered pretty heavily, and the interviews still persist, and there's a great op-ed in Newsweek that just got published too. You talk about humanity, and the one thing I found over there was that one, food is powerful. Okay, it's feeding the souls of the soldiers. It's feeding and distracting some of the people in Ukraine from what's really happening for just a moment. But the state that they're living in right now isn't humane. Even though they may be safe in Lviv, right, far away from the war. The sirens do go off. You do have to seek shelter. The power is constantly going in and out. There's generators running. It's like this annoying sound that never stops, right? If there's not a sandbag, you're going to see one of those hedgehogs, you know, those crosses that stop the tanks. You know what I mean? There's always this persistence and pressure and environment that you're not safe. And until you leave that environment and you go to someplace safe to buy a pączki in Poland, you breathe and you say, holy shit, you're like, this is different. Like there's not that, you know. So the humanity there is, humans will adapt to any situation, but they shouldn't have to. And what's happening in Ukraine, as you know, is an injustice, and it's not right, but the life that people are living there is not where it should be, not for the adults and not for the children. So, you know, keep them in your prayers too, because that's far from over, and you know, a couple of planes and tanks aren't going to solve the problem. It's going to take a bigger power, a larger spirit. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Brandon, again. Brandon's going to be in Fellowship Hall, so you can serve yourself food, but feel free to ask him any question, approach him, and you'll have your time. So thank you all for coming again, and thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Before we lose you over to all these other people, I didn't put you on the spot.
Oh, no, not at all.
It was anything you put on the spot, that was the fun.
I have no idea what you're saying. You really don't. I have no fucking idea. I got an event, so I got like 4 events going on right now, and I just got people in positions to handle them. That's good. Yeah, I let them run.
He knows the sermon he's giving next.
But no, it's not the sermon. It's not.